Morning. Nice cup.
Good morning. Yeah, thank you. Welcome to part two.
Yeah, great. How do you want to start this one?
I have, I don't know. I guess I already kind of started it without you.
And I was telling Aaron last week, because last week I felt like I kind of just took over and started talking about the project. So yeah, maybe what I'll do is I'll share a screen.
Tell us what we're
Uh,
looking at. What are we looking at, James?
So here's the thing, homeowners, homebuyers, investors, we all want to find that perfect property to move into and to eventually sell for a profit. And we want to make that purchase in a place with affordable, safe, quality homes, communities, and businesses. Why? So we can actually enjoy our lives, take vacations, and spend the quality time we want with the people we love. How do we do all this without risking a fortune and running ourselves ragged? That's the big question, and this show is dedicated to the answer.
it's actually the apartment that I'm broadcasting from here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and what it is it was basically what you would call a squash court. Uh, Let me just quickly just jump ahead to the shape of the apartment. So
Why
this
do you
was the
call it a
apartment.
squash court? Because there's a window at one side?
It's a squash court because of the shape of it. It's like it feels like when we moved in, it was basically like an empty, unfinished box, and it had a concrete floor and white drywall. So if I let
You
me just
moved in and it was unfinished?
pretty much it had a kitchen in it. These are existing photographs. This is what it looked like when we moved in.
Yeah.
So this is it looking at the only window in the apartment.
Yeah.
And you can see that it's basically just like an empty concrete floor, white drywall. There was only one person that was there before us. They were renting, and so they
Mm-hmm.
just had a bunch of loose furniture, which they took with them.
Yeah.
And then it was like a very simple white kitchen millwork block, which could
Right.
fit with just about anything. And then you can also see that there were a bunch of frosted glass sliders that they
Mm-hmm.
used. I think the whole building was fitted with them. And
Yeah.
what these are is they use them in two locations. One location is it kind of squares off a bedroom, and then on the other side, there's three more of them that form the closet. And the apartment is so tight. Let me just go to the demolition drawings. I'm going to skip through the renderings. So come back to them.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the floor plan before we started, and you can see that what the plan was to get rid of the frosted glass sliders, and we were going to start over
Mm-hmm.
with actually the original plan was to do it with shoji's, to replace them with shoji's. And
What's a shoji?
a shoji is like a Japanese wooden screen that
Oh, cool.
slides,
Yeah,
uh,
that'd be
and
neat.
it slides on like a wood to wood connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's very low tech, but quite nice. But we ended up what we ended up doing is we ended up reusing the glass sliders. So none of the glass sliders were thrown out; they were all reused in the apartment. But what was done was, and I'm just going to move down here now to the proposed. This is the proposed drawing set, or of this proposed of the same apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So three of the partitions were kept in the hallway, and then the other two that were on the side of the bedroom were moved to extend the storage closet, make a second closet effectively. I don't know if you can see my mouse.
Yeah, I can see it.
Um, and so what that allowed us to do was it allowed us to um, get daylight into the bedroom, and so it's a lot nicer. And it also makes the apartment feel bigger because now we don't have these partitions, and you got to remember that the partitions cannot be retracted. At best, they can only be slid halfway,
Yeah.
but they still stand there. Whereas what we have now is we have a drape. You can kind of see it symbolized here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the drape is great because unlike the frosted glass sliders, which take up half the space, the drape can retract to about a quarter. Um,
Yeah.
so if I just turn the camera here, maybe I can point it. There is
Yeah, yeah.
there. And so you can see that how much more open it is. I'll show you some photos that were sort of pre-taken so that it's not
Did you
as
struggle to buy this kind of layout? Because I have a hard time selling people what I believe is called a borrowed light bedroom, which is what you've got.
Yeah, well, it's funny. You may have heard the phrase that real estate is all about location, location, location. I don't know if you've heard that one.
No, never heard that before.
So we were well, we were concerned about.
That's really good. I'm gonna write that.
Yeah,
down.
write it down. Write it down. So we were concerned about like living downtown. We wanted to live downtown, and we didn't want to own a car. So we wanted to live somewhere where we could walk everywhere. And there are a lot of things in and around Gastown, even though Gastown's expensive, that there are amenities that we like favorite restaurants is a good example, or just like being close to all of the primary modes of transit. So the fact that we don't want to own a car, it's great that we can be near the C-Bus, the SkyTrain, Canada Line, and several major rapid transit bus lines. So you can kind of get anywhere. And we have a lot of friends that, we grew up in Deep Cove, and a lot of the friends I grew up with in Deep Cove now live like all over Vancouver, Metro Van, like as far as Langley, and living in this location, it allows a lot of those people to visit. Like if we have, like we've sort of become like the party house because it's central to everyone. Like that people can come in from Richmond or Langley, or Langley's a bit extreme. We don't really see them anymore, but you get the idea. So let me get back to the project a little bit.
But you made, just quickly, so you made that decision of say like, I'd rather live in Gastown with the sliders rather than say Fairview, where you might get like a one bedroom, right, but you'd have to drive over and have that additional expense of the car. So this has allowed you to move into somewhat of an empty shell and outfit it to your liking.
That's right. And also because it's small, it allows us to, like, there's less to renovate. So, the easiest way to bring down your cost per square foot is to just bring down the square footage that you're working on, to reduce the scope. And so this is a very small apartment, which allowed us to fill it in. Like when we moved in, like we were still fairly recently married, and we didn't really own any furniture, and we didn't really own much of anything. And so when we got to move into an empty white shell, it was actually great because we could put our fingerprints all over it. And it's funny, like, I've heard it said that developers like to use white because it allows a marketing agent to sell the apartment like in such a way that a buyer can imagine themselves in it. They can imagine like finishing it themselves. They can, it makes sense. There's so much white drywall.
Lime green's really hard to market. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You would know about that more than me, probably, about what colors are marketed easily, but white seems to be, from my experience, used a lot. And I've also heard another architect describe the use of white as the absence of taste, which I love. But now that's great because I like to use white. Like, I mean, you've probably also heard in like artistic terms the use of the term white space. Yeah. And so white spaces can actually also be really useful because if you put a piece of artwork up on the wall, and if everything around it is white, then your eye goes to the art. And it's the same thing in this house based on how we finished it. Is that we brought in a bunch of wood into the apartment, so then and everything else is kind of like white, so your eye travels to the wood, and that's kind of something that we wanted. So maybe I'll just say a couple other quick things about why we chose this apartment. So it's small, but it has a storage closet.
Can you scroll just a little so we can see both the pictures?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let me just zoom out. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right, great. So even though it's a small apartment, it's got a storage closet. So on the one hand, it's a studio apartment, 0-bedroom apartment, but like on paper, it's zero bedrooms. But in practice, it's got a bedroom that's effectively just next to the kitchen. So that's bedroom number one. And then the storage closet, since we added a closet to this apartment, we didn't need to use the storage closet for storage. And so the storage closet is effectively where we store another bed.
So use your mouse to show us where that is.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so that's right. So there's a storage closet here. And we're storing a bed in it right now. We've had guests come in from out of town and stay there overnight. So
How
that's
does
been
that
really
go? What do
useful.
they say? What's the feedback after
Well, it
sleeping in your
depends.
bed?
So we have, it depends who it is. I actually learned a lot about hosting guests, getting I'll show you some photos in a minute, some fold out bunks that we put
Yeah.
in that we're storing in here. But effectively what it is if you are a small person, then sleeping in the storage closet seems to be fine. We've slept, how many people guests do you think? 4 different guests, 4 or 5? And only one of them had to come out and sleep on the couch. And that person was how tall? 6'7".
Wow.
So he didn't really fit in the storage closet. So what was interesting about it though is like the couch, which I'll also be able to show you. Actually, I'm just going to point a photo at Aaron. So
Wave to the camera, Aaron.
Yeah, wave to the camera. Oops, hang on one second. I don't have enough real estate. There we go. So you see the couch? Aaron, can you stand up for one second?
And here's
the
my
couch.
lovely wife, he said.
Yeah, there's my wife, lovely wife.
Hi.
And the couch is a monocushion. So
Okay.
that has no seams. And the rear cushion, sorry, I'm like aiming sideways here. So the cushions on the back sit on top of the monocushion as well. So what you're left with when you take all the cushions off is a futon. And so we've also slept a bunch of people on there. And that one is super comfortable. That company recently sadly went out of business. So we might have the last couch they ever made. So yeah, that's great. As a result, we can sleep like a decent number of people in what is supposedly a studio apartment. Like we can sleep, we could comfortably sleep 5 in the apartment.
Wow.
Obviously you wouldn't want to do that long term. Like I would never suggest that you could rent this out as a apartment that sleeps 5, but it's an apartment that sleeps 2 with space for 3 guests. And the storage closet will do well for a nursery in the short term. And then when you may have noticed Erin was pregnant.
No, we did not notice that. Of course we didn't.
And so we'll see when the child gets older how they feel about living in a closet. If they, maybe they will. Yeah, look at the Harry Potter treatment.
Is that how you're gonna refer to your newborn, the child?
The child, yeah, the child. That's what we're gonna refer to them.
What, Harry Potter?
Yeah. Or well, yeah.
Harry Potter.
There you go.
Name.
Okay, so maybe I'll just that kind of. Do you have any other questions about like kind of why we chose the apartment, or does that kind of touch on that pretty well?
Gastown. You can make it your own within budget. And sounds like you had some good inspiration when you got it. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Cool. Okay. Well, let me maybe now talk a little bit about the finishes and the strategy for what we did. This was a project where we had kind of like an overall vision for it. Oh, I went too far. But because it was our project, we really took our time on a lot of things, and B, some things were more expensive than we had hoped. So we kind of waited to do it between financial quarters, you might say. Like we kind of did things as we could afford it. So like when we moved in, we had like, and anything in these images that you see that has kind of like a brown tone on it was new. That we basically did all of the furniture with the exception of a couple of antiques as new, and it was made of hardwood plywood, which is this material that is relatively inexpensive, very sturdy, and has this really beautiful exposed grain look. It's not like regular plywood. Regular softwood plywood you've probably seen all the time. It's used in construction, and it the edges are rough, and it can like the seams can chip out, like you can get gouges in it really easily. And that's because it's made of softwood lumber. But you can now, well, you've been able to get this for a while now, but you can get plywood made out of hardwood lumber. And so it's more dimensionally stable, and the edges don't chip out as easily. So it's like it's a totally different look. And what I like about that, this is like something that I was kind of like a strategy that I've been using on both this project and the previous project from last week, which is, I had a professor at U of T that said that one of the things that frustrated him with a lot of his peers is how they struggled to find a reason to choose anything. Like why, like they have no thesis about why a room should be the way it is, what material should be selected, what even like say what height something should be. They're using more like their gut, their instinct, as opposed to having like a very explicit plan from the get-go about what kind of effect they're trying to have on the occupants, or at least what kind of life they're trying to suggest could be lived by the occupants.
Yeah.
And I think that makes sense to me. I mean, in the one hand, like you might be nervous to suggest living a certain way that is so precise that as you start living in the space, you may find that, that you maybe can't live like the way that you thought that you could, the way that you imagined. And the nice thing about this project is we're the inhabitants, so we can kind of take more risks on things that other people might not. Like even the fact that we chose to live here in the first place in such a small space, and then to fit it out, it's kind of like living in a boat. Especially now that we're in quarantine, it really feels like living on a boat. So yeah, maybe I'll talk about. Oh yeah, that's right. So I'll talk about the thesis, the strategy. So the strategy that I like, that I've been trying to use. Let me see if I can get a specific photo. Yeah, I guess this one will do. I thought I
like how you
downloaded some
label your
additional
photos.
Well, yeah. So you can kind of see the exposed ply there. Let me just quickly check my email. I thought I had another email coming in that yeah, here we go. This is the one I wanted. So here's a better example where you can see the graining of the plywood take a 90-degree turn and go down the face of the table.
Yeah.
And the chair even is made of the same material. And what I like about this exposed graining is that it's very honest about what it's made of. Like you can look at it and immediately understand what it is and how it was made. Whereas with a lot of furniture, it's actually like MDF, like particle board with laminate glued on the edges. So you can't, you have no idea actually what it's made of. Like you look at an IKEA table, like those black coffee tables, and you don't like it looks like it looks almost alien, like in terms of like you don't really know what it is, or where it came from, what it's made of. Like, is it made of plastic? Is it made of wood? Well, it feels like
melts
plastic,
in the rain.
Yeah. So it's just like, and maybe there's not much. Maybe that's not like a very practical reason to choose why to make something out of another material. But what I find is, and this is like another kind of attack on the same thought, which is that there's something very calming about looking at natural materials, like having a view to like Vancouver is like the classic example, the cult of the view in Vancouver. It's so important to have a view to the landscape. And so similarly, like in an apartment like this, where we don't have a lot of a view, like we have like the classic Vancouver view, which is to say we have a tiny little sliver between two buildings where you can see part of Grouse Mountain. Like you can see, like it's overcast today, so we can't see it, but it's like the teeniest, tiniest little sliver. And so what we had to do is we had to bring the nature inside to make it feel more comforting. Another way to maybe think about that that I like to use for explanation is like some materials or things that you look at or experience, they'll make you feel more stressed, and so I try to think about what materials won't stress you out. Or another example of that would be like if you use like a lot of white or a lot of like single material that has no detail, then your eye will naturally not look at that. It will look at wherever the detail is in the apartment. So if the apartment is all white and stainless steel, but there's like swirling patterns of wood veneer, then your eye will have something to look at. And another thing that we did is we added planters to the apartment. So let me try to point this out the window again. You can kind of see there. There's a rhododendron on the end, and then we got garlic popping up and rosemary and some other things. So those planters are made of aluminum, and they were built. I measure them; they fit exactly. I probably should have given myself a 1/4 of an inch tolerance because they like are friction fit in between the guards now. But basically, what was there before, you can kind of see on the left and right, there's the frosted glass guards.
Yeah.
That's what was there before. And I just found it like it got dirty really easily. And with even though like the new planters are very like minimal, what's nice about it I find is that again, like your eye just travels right to the plants. I know again we're a little far from there, and this is on a webcam, so I can't like really walk around the house. But well, I should say one other thing we are doing is we're going to get a wood deck put on top of the pavers, and so there we go. The wood deck is made from a type of wood called akoya, and it's a type of pine that is put in a chemical bath, and the chemical, I think it's almost like a vinegar bath, and it penetrates all the way through the wood, and it basically like freezes the wood like body worlds, and it makes it last a lot longer. So you can have like like decks can get mungy really easily, or like
these things.
Yeah, that looks right. Yeah. So we're gonna get that cut, and we're gonna kind of loose lay it on the deck so that it's again, there's more natural material and it's more comforting. It's nicer to walk on. You can do yoga out there. I'm pulling up my most recent drawing. This is actually from last week. We're on the precipice of ordering this deck. This is the most recent thing in progress. So you can see I've got like 2 photos of the deck there on the left. Oh, this is actually perfect. I didn't even know this was going to be here. So there's the roto. So you can see like the planters were sized to be full height. They line up with the guard. The planting bed itself is actually only about as deep as where my mouse is, and everything below that is just a cavity. It would have been really expensive but what I wanted to do if I had the budget was to do the cavity under the planters as storage, outdoor storage.
Cool.
But that would have involved like building a drain under the planter, and then the company really only makes planters one way, which is like a box, and so they were like nervous about kind of going literally thinking outside of the box. So that didn't happen. And then this is the layout. So you can see like we measured the deck exactly so that we could figure out like what spacing felt the best. And we did, I don't know if you can see, I already deleted it off the sheet, but there was like 11 options of different board widths, trying to find like the one that was most pleasing. Because, and this is how OCD I am, is that like I wanted the boards to be equally spaced, but that I wanted the center gap to line up with this planter gap, and then I wanted no boards that were like half boards, and so you try every width of board imaginable to try to get that accomplished. Okay, so that's one thing. Maybe I'll go through some photos. Yeah, I think
you're keeping busy during quarantine.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to show you some details. This is all just going to be kind of random. It's not no particular order, but it's all from the same. It's all from the same apartment. So I think I'm going to start with this video. So this is a drawer on the other side of the kitchen island I'm casting from, and we put an aluminum flat bar.
Amazing.
Embedded it into the drawer.
I know exactly what that's for.
And so you can level your flour.
Yeah.
It's very calming. And then this is a dresser where we put a piece of glass on top of the dresser instead of a tabletop. And then the top drawer is organized with a bunch of different grids so that you can store your various like jewelry and ties and things. And this one was also a really fun detail. The glass is actually a type of glass called Starfire glass, which is more expensive, and it has a different lead content, which means the glass is clearer. So it doesn't turn, when you look through it, it doesn't turn things as green.
Yeah.
And that may not, I mean, you may not sound like that's a big deal, but if this was to be a piece of regular green glass, you would see that it would have had a green tint on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
No, that's a really nice detail. What
that was
happens if you
nice.
buy a new tie? Do you have to get rid of one?
I've got actually a that's a great question.
The best ties only go on display?
That's right. The best ties go on display, and then the on the levels below, they're still organized. They're not as organized as this. They just have a bunch of like they're like separated into quarters. And so like one quarter is socks, one quarter is underwear, you know, and it's great because then you don't have to fold your underwear or your socks. You just throw it in the bin.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
So it's super efficient. And it's also right across the hall from the washer and the dryer. So there's very little wasted time in this apartment. Like one of the things we like to say about this apartment, another thing that like I forgot to mention earlier about why we like it is because it's small, it's easy to clean. And so like this morning, I cleaned it up for 15 minutes and then I got on the phone. You know, so, and it was easy. So that's something that I love. And like we've like my wife has a couple of friends that have like live in a house out in the burbs, and they have something like 5 toilets. How many is it? 5 washrooms?
That's a lot.
And they complain about having to clean it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, like having a big house gets dusty and you gotta clean it. The same thing with a car, you gotta maintain it, you know, and if you don't have those things, then it's just it's less stress.
Have you built a baby change station?
We don't have a baby change station yet. What's the plan for baby change? It's gonna be like it's going on top of that dresser where you saw the glass. Yeah. Yeah.
Right on top of your ties.
That's right on top of the ties. Well, it should be easy to clean. This is a carpet that we put down recently. It's just carpet tile, so it comes in this kind of like natural pattern, and then we spent like a day like moving the tiles around to kind of get a pattern that we felt was nice. The nice thing I like about carpet tile, particularly the way we laid it down, is that it's actually not glued down. It's using tape, like single-sided tape. Mm-hmm. So if you get a tile dirty, like beyond cleaning ability, then you could just replace one tile. Exactly. Amazing. Or if someone moves in, this is the one thing I wasn't sure about the carpet. I was like least confident about. So I was like, basically the flooring is the thing I'm least confident that someone is going to move in and like. So all of the flooring that we're going to put in the apartment is going to be easily removed, so that someone might move in if they like the millwork but they don't like the floor, then they can have that.
It does ring of a bit of a putting green. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah. So not everyone may like that. Here it is in the storage closet.
That's brilliant though that you can change it out. I think that's a really smart move.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought so as well. There's the crib, so the crib can fit in it, and I think here is the bunks folding down.
Yeah.
So as I like to say, we're storing these beds in the storage closet, and that a real bedroom has windows, and is as like BC Housing has a minimum recommended size for bedrooms. So I would never call this a bedroom, but it does store these beds quite nicely.
I might call it a bedroom.
Yeah, I understand that marketing real estate might refer to it as a bedroom. But
just put a shelf on there to call it a closet, and then we're good.
This is how the apartment's being used right now. So this is on the left is my work computer and the work screens and all the hardware I got I'm working from home with Proscenium. And then the computers on the right are the home computers where I'm casting from right now. And missing from the image is also this tablet, which I like to draw on sometimes. So it's like just swimming in electronics. So that's what coronavirus does to a tiny apartment.
Right.
You know, whereas if you lived in a house that had your own office, then maybe you could kind of keep things a little bit more under control. But it's just the way things go, and I certainly have no regrets living here. Here's the living room. This is a photo taken from last week. There's a painting that usually hangs on the wall, but we took the painting off to project. This was Trudeau when we were watching. So what this is like just like kind of going back to that thought about having the eye travel where you want it to go. like you can see that there's a white, like an opening space made here that allows your that creates a white space around the painting, or at least creates a frame for the TV, for the projection.
Mm-hmm.
But also the bookshelves float. They don't have any brackets. They're hovering in the air, so there's no, your eye's not distracted by the typical detail of a bracket. And then we got these turnbuckles made up, which is made from actually it's like a boating supply company. They typically make guardrails for like sailboats, and and this is actually the same. It's the same product. And what I like about it is, going back to this image, is that it's about as thin as you can make it while still holding the books back from falling off if you have an earthquake.
Right.
And so we put those on mostly because we've got a baby coming, and we were we just wanted the peace of mind. But even these guards are just screwed in from the top. So if someone was to move in and they wanted a look that was more like classically modern, then they could do that. And I'm just trying to find, I know I saved an image of this. Yeah, so here it is before anything went on. So it's a lot cleaner, obviously, without the cables. But so that's just kind of one that I kind of go back and forth on that. And the other thing that's nice about this, so like, yeah, as I mentioned, they kind of float. They're rebarred into the wall, which is how they do that. And because of that, they're so strong. Like Erin has climbed to the top on these things. She did that one of the first weeks before we knew if you could actually do that, and now we know, so that's good. And then another thing,
did you just drill into the concrete to put the rebar in?
So what there is the drywall had to be taken off, and then we had to add a bunch of wood blocking in between the studs. There is some concrete. There's a couple of concrete anchors where there's a shear wall or shear column, but so it's a combination of anchors into wood and concrete.
Okay.
But what I don't know if I kind of don't know how much I would recommend doing this all the time. Like, this is one of those ones where it's like, you know, you're kind of putting your foot down and saying like, this is the way people are going to live in this apartment, is they're going to have these shelves, right? And so someone might, like an agent like yourself might say like, oh, well, that might be putting the sale at risk because it's going to be really hard to tear that out. Or on the other flip side, I find that like, well, we thought really hard about it, and we think this is like we're kind of demonstrating how to use it in a way that we think is really efficient for a space this small. Yeah. So we're hoping that someone will see the level of thought or even at least like the consistency, like with all of the finishes throughout the apartment, you know, that it's all
you're buying a custom build essentially with your place. So I think it's great. I don't think you have to worry.
I'm going to go through a few more.
And if you want to make an offer on James's apartment, give me a call and we'll talk to him.
That's right. Might go on the market in a few years. Who knows?
But for the right price, maybe now.
You know, show up with a briefcase full of money and we'll talk. This is the spice drawer. These jars in the front come from Dollarama. They're $1 each. And then we from eBay, or no, was it Amazon? We got like the classic, like, was it like 1970s punched label maker? So these labels are like, they have depth, so you can like run your fingers over them. It's really satisfying.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool.
And then the other thing, or you can like turn all the labels backwards if you want to just see the spices, but you have to really know your spices if you want to do it that way. I love this detail. It's kind of hard to see, but what it is we glued a sheet of polished stainless steel to the bathroom door. So it's a full height mirror, and it's a full height mirror and it's a door. So it's like you don't have to waste precious white space in the apartment with a mirror. Like if we want to put a piece of artwork here, we can, and we still have the mirror. So I like putting the mirror on the door. We chose polished stainless again because of the baby, that like it's less like it's not going to shatter. Yeah. And although it can scratch, we haven't scratched it yet.
How much does that cost?
It was cheap, actually. Well, relative to the rest of the apartment. It was something like what, $600 supply and install for the mirror. Yeah, it wasn't so bad. And the thing about this, actually, you raise a great point, which is that they're talking about what's affordable. So one of the things that I was able to use is obviously my experience as an architect, reviewing the cost of various change orders and things to have a sense of what we could afford in advance. And one of the things that is true today is that labor is generally much more expensive than materials. So if you can come up with a design with low cost materials that doesn't take a lot of labor, then you might be able to afford something custom in your apartment. And so in the case of this whole apartment, where everything's made of hardwood plywood and inexpensive materials like polished stainless, then we only had to be able to afford to pay skilled laborers to build it. And we also, of course, saved the money on the drawings because I'm capable of drawing. So I could do all of the drawings at no cost, to myself, which is obviously a privilege that not everybody has. So that's another cost that if you're a layperson that you would incur if you wanted to do a project like the project you're looking at today. Then you're not only looking at the cost of the material and labor to build it, but then you're also looking at the cost of hiring someone to draw your idea or to come up with something for you. So it can get expensive quite quickly, and you really have to do it because you want to do it for yourself, and then hopefully someone else sees part of themselves in it when you're selling it.
I think it's like you say, you're doing it for yourself, and one of the really privileges for you is your knowledge of that kind of stuff. Like, I'm sure tons of people wouldn't even know that you have a product like polished stainless steel that can sub in for a mirror. Like, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then this is another place where we use stainless steel. This is the island, and this is actually brushed stainless steel, so it's not as reflective. But and it's taken quite a beating, but what's great about it is that it's basically bulletproof. So we've spilled so many things on this table. We'll be able to change the baby on this table. Like, I used to live in like a classic modernist bungalow where everything was like Danish teak furniture. And it was a house designed for parties, but the problem with teak furniture is that you can't leave glass on the teak or it will leave a ring permanently in the teak. But if you leave like a messy half finished wine glass, or like if you spilled coffee or something on this table, it's fine. Like the only thing we have to do to clean this table is spray it with vinegar. So it's really great for cleaning. Just show you a couple of other quick details. This is the lobby. You can see again with the use of the plywood.
And the umbrella
hole in it. Yeah, cut a hole in it for umbrellas. And now the broom hangs from the wall. The broom handle is also made of birch, which is the same material as the ply. And this broom came from the Granville Island Broom Company, and I drove them crazy because I went, and you've probably been there, and they have like hundreds of handles, in there to choose from. And I said, do you have a birch handle? And they said, yeah, we got here are these 20 birch handles, but they all had the bark on. And I said, no, I don't want a birch handle with the bark on. I want a birch handle with no bark. And they said, well, we don't have one of those. We've got one in the back, but there's no broom on it. So you'd have to wait 2 weeks. And so we waited, and they were surprised that we couldn't choose one of the other handles. But the nice thing about it is that the color temperature is more similar to the shelving.
Did you explain why?
I tried. I tried. Sometimes the decisions that people don't really understand, like this one, I don't know if they probably didn't have fun making this, but they did it at my request, which is they routed out the shape of the wine glass upside down into the shelf. And they had to use a multi-axis computer program to drill.
It looks like a CNC job.
That's right. It was a multi-axis CNC job. But I was super thrilled with how that one turned out. think I've got a couple of other.
If you had come in the door at one of my shops, and I had one of those places, like, okay, but I'm gonna charge you for it.
Yeah, that's right. That mostly covers it. There's a couple of things that I think I just want to touch on quickly in terms of just like going back and talking about like the actual drawing package and how it's read. So the front page is typically like the most general information. So it's like, it's got a table of contents. It tells you what to find on each page. There's a summary of the work so that a general contractor can just quickly read the summary and understand. Like in this case, it's broken into different items. Like there's a coffee table is one item, like kitchen island is another item, you know, the millwork along the credenza is another item. And so they can go through it and say, okay, I got to do all these things. And then general notes are more just like things not to do or things to do, like what standards, minimum standards the work needs to be to do.
Yours is long.
Achieve. Yeah, or like also like what noise, when you can generate noise in the apartment. You know, like so strata rules and this is one that like is really important. You got to put the size of the elevator on the drawing because sometimes things don't fit in the elevator, and if they don't fit in the elevator, then they got to get carried up the stairs. And the mill worker generally does not like carrying things up the stairs, as you can imagine.
Is that something you had to learn the hard way?
Those notes
on the elevator?
Almost. So what happened was this island didn't fit in the elevator. So they brought the island up in 3 pieces and they built it inside the apartment.
Yeah.
So whoever moves into this apartment, I hope they like the island, because if they don't, it's going to be really hard to get it out. They're going to have to basically demolish it inside the apartment to get rid of it. But it's also a very functional element, so I'm hopeful that someone will like it. Oh yeah, that's right. I don't think I showed you a photo of this. This is something that you can do for almost $0. This is you can do for about maybe $100. Which is that you can, we painted the door out of the apartment with blackboard paint. And now we leave groceries on it. And our friends like to leave their graffiti on it when they go home. And then we also built in a key, there's like a tiny little stub out wall, which I assume was because the contractor forgot there was a pipe or something. And so we built a key rack into it. So we got a place to put our keys, and there's also a place that holds the chalk at the bottom.
What's the most common graffiti you get from your friends on the wall?
I hate to say that it's dicks.
That's what I was just like. My friends would be drawing dicks on it all day long.
But that's what it is. Yeah. Okay. I know I want to show you the coffee table. This is another thing we put a bunch of, before I show you the coffee table, we put a bunch of hooks on the underside of the shelf for mugs because we're running out of storage, and so this was us, like, this is the original design. We're gonna put 2 hooks on. We're like, oh, one for me and one for Aaron. That's so like cute. But then we realized like, no, like we have more than 2 mugs and we need to put them somewhere. So then this was like me trying to figure out like how many to put and then how to get the spacing right. And then like sending instructions to the millworker being like, I want you to drill them here. And then we also drilled some extra like in the credenza for other storage. This is another one, like the key rack. I'm like, actually we started with 2 keys and we're like, you know what? We need more storage. That's like generally what I've learned in living in a small space is you gotta like really, really store things efficiently. So now, as you can kind of see behind me, we have all of the mugs hanging from a rack.
They're not all red, James.
I know. We're actually thinking about getting them to match someday, but you're getting a sneak peek of how it's actually being lived in. Okay, so now I think I'll show you the. Actually, I'll show you the coffee table last. I'll just finish flying through the drawings, then we'll do the coffee table last because it's kind of a cool little moving part. So then, the next page is like the context page. So it shows what's being demolished. There's a box drawn around every scope package. So people know, like when I say, I want you to do scope 2B and it's got a box around it, they're like, okay, they know what they're doing. Then you blow up the drawings in bigger detail, and I see all these little arrows that are kind of like
they
flying all
stress
over
me
the
out.
place. Yeah, that is basically like views. If you're standing in the apartment facing the direction of the arrows pointing, then you can go to this page number and that drawing number on that page, and it will show you what it would look like if you were standing right there. And so it's important to have all these section arrows, because if you have different storage in your credenza or in your island, then unless you cut a section through every condition, then the builder won't know what's in the drawers. I'll come back to that page. That's a great page. So then this is kind of like what some of the arrows would have seen. And then it gets more and more blown up. It gets bigger with more dimensions drawn on it, so that like a builder can go to any one page and know exactly how big something is supposed to be. Okay, yeah, actually, this is actually refreshing my memory on a couple of other things. So I mentioned these shelves. It's actually got a secret message coded into it, which is that it's got the first letter of both of our names. So it's got a J for James and an E for Aaron. So it's like an architect's version of graffiti. It's going to remain after we move out.
That's cute.
And then we also one day are hoping to get a sliding ladder in front of the
I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah, so we might do that. What was that other thing?
The sliding ladder will be like a very nice accent. You got to put that in before you eventually sell it.
Yeah, I think I mean I really do want to. We're doing first is we're going to get the floor put on so that we can make sure that we got the height of the feet of the ladder just right, because we're going to have the rung of every ladder. Like the ladder is going to be 1 foot spacing, and so is the bookshelf. So you can be able to tilt the ladder up against the bookshelf, and it won't obstruct the books.
That's such a great detail.
That's something that's been planned for years, but like the ladder's still yet to get here. And then, so yeah, I just mentioned the floor. That's the next thing that we're looking at doing is we're going to use the same plywood that has been used to make all the millwork. And we're going to use it to make a floor with a large 4 foot by 8 foot sheets. And this can be done only because it's hardwood plywood. Normal plywood, you can't really do this because it's not as dimensionally stable. And this is a bit of an experimental detail. You don't really see floors like this very often. So what it's going to be is it's going to be floating on the floor. The seams will be glued together, but it will not be glued to the floor below. So it can also be removed fairly easily. And then we're going to shave the edge of the plywood so it becomes like a ramp that allows you to kind of get, because like the floor height outside of the apartment is fixed, right? So we still have to get back down from any floor that we add on top of the concrete. You need to get back down to the height of the
and you'll see some of those layers like you've got of illustrated, which will be neat.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds pricey.
Yeah, well, it's just the plywood itself is not too pricey. It's the labor. It was in the end it's going to cost a couple of $1,000s, and most of that will be in the labor. And then it was also a couple $100 for a layer of recycled rubber tires that's getting put underneath it as well. It makes it softer on your feet. It's more comfortable to stand on. So okay, so now we're going to show you the coffee table. I think that's the last thing I've got, and then if you have any questions, maybe we can wrap on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go back and see if I can. If I hit stop sharing, are we back to the webcam now?
Yeah.
All right. So this is going to be a bit janky. Erin's going to be my helpful operator of the coffee table. She's going to be
your Wheel of Fortune girl.
That's right. Hang on 1 second as I'm going to move this all over the place for 1 second and I get a little closer. Okay. So the deal with this coffee table is that it's on an adjustable height mechanism.
Yeah.
And so you can raise it up or lower it down, which is great because it allows you to kind of eat off of it or get the projector to the right height to line up with the opening. Or you can raise it up really high and it can become an extension to the kitchen island.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see that these bars she's pulling out from the back of the table, it allows it to fold open so
It
that
looks really easy to move around and like move up and down.
it is actually surprisingly easy to move around. It's got wheels. You see those the feet actually have wheels underneath so it can
Wow.
roll. And because it folds open like this, it's actually the exact same width as the island, because obviously we got it built to be the same width as the island. So you can raise it up to the island and extend the island, meaning that instead of sitting 6 people for dinner, you could sit 10.
Yeah.
And we've gone back and forth about getting a coffee table, or a patio table for outside. But if we got a patio table for outside, then we could bring it inside and you could sit 14, which is pretty good for an apartment that is supposedly a studio.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many square feet is your apartment?
How many square feet is it? 600?
650.
650. That's
wow.
Right. Yeah. So, do you have any questions?
Can I ask how much you spend on renovating it, or is that not?
How much did I spend on renovating it?
Yeah.
I don't have an exact figure, but I can basically tell you that any one item is going to cost, like any one piece of, let's just talk about the kitchen island, for example. All right, so the kitchen island was probably $1,000 in material, maybe $1,500 max. And then it was, but it was several $1,000s in labor. So that's where you're gonna pay for things. And some things are cheap, like like the paint on the door was no more than the cost of the paint, and the mirror was less than $1,000. The drapes, I forgot to mention that we I said we got rid of the sliders. We replaced them with drapes. Those drapes were less than $1,000 each. Supply and install. And drapes can come from a huge different range of pricing, but if you just want something simple and gray, then you can find that for pretty cheap. Really. And how much was the couch? You remember the couch? Also a couple thousand?
I don't remember. Yeah, it was like.
It was more than West Elm.
It was more than West Elm.
Yeah, it was. But way better, And I've heard horror stories about kind of mass-produced furniture and how it's kind of. I've even we've had some that when we were renting, and it just like disintegrates. So it's nice to have one that's like where you can choose the upholstery and like how long it's supposed to last. But yeah, to someone who is thinking about renovating, I would say that you got to do it for yourself. I've heard, maybe you can corroborate whether you think this is true, that you can expect to recoup no more than 1/4 of your investment if you renovate. Yeah, I would say that's true. And so the only other thing that I did that other people may not have a reason to do is that not only were we doing it for ourselves, but also it's a bit of a portfolio piece where today's a great example where I can kind of show off what if you've got a budget and that's something that you see value is in your home. And now that we're living in quarantine, I think more people are thinking about that. Yeah. About kind of like tidying up their home and making it more livable now that they're stuck in it all the time. Then maybe it's a service that you think is worth pursuing.
Wonderful. And so you got a lot of details on those drawings, and I imagine a lot of hours going into that. If you were producing that for a client, what's like a range that making all that architectural
it
drawings
totally,
for it might
it can be it's pretty
low end, high end.
It's for just a single piece of furniture, like say that I want an architect design a kitchen island for me, right? Yeah. That probably wouldn't be too expensive because the services are very limited. For example, I would say that just generally speaking, an expensive architecture project involves one where you have to pull a building permit, because if the moment you have to pull a building permit, you have to do a whole lot of procedure to close out the permit properly, and there's a lot of paperwork involved, and so there's a lot of time involved in that. But if you want to, it's funny, like you don't actually hear people hiring architects to design furniture very much, because there are industrial designers that specialize in furniture, and it usually when an architect designs furniture, it's usually just for themselves. But and it's the same thing even with like an interior designer. It's like, you know, for all the work that I did in this apartment, you could have probably hired an interior designer to, but would they have given you the same look? You know, like I find that that every designer, whether they're an interior designer or an architect, kind of has their own sensibilities. And so, you know, there's an architect that I've heard, he says, like, when you want to choose someone to design your home, you should like go and like, it's kind of like dating. Like you kind of like need to meet a few people and find the person that fits right with you. And so hopefully, like, as I continue to develop a portfolio, people will see the kind of work that I'm doing, and they'll decide if they think that looks like the kind of life that they want to live. And then that would kind of be drawing on clients that kind of see themselves in the work that I'm doing. And, you know, yes, there's a premium because I'm working as an architect, and so I'm working to the tariff of fees that architects charge. But that's not to say that it's beyond reach, especially for a small project. You know, that architects are allowed to kind of adjust their fees for the reality of the scope of the project. So if it's a realistically small project, and it's the other thing too, is like, how much does a client know that they want? Like how exact of a thing do they know that they want? Because if they know, for example, exactly what they want their furniture to look like, then they're effectively the designer. They just need to hire someone to draw it for them. But if they want someone to envision it for them, then you have to build in fees for like a number of rounds of review and
right.
You know, where they might have feedback and say, oh, this is not what I wanted. You know, and then like another thing that architects have to think about, and I've seen this a number of times, is when you are doing a design for a client and you come up with ideas, do you give them one idea, your favorite? What if you come up with two ideas and you kind of like them both? Do you show them both? Or what if you like one like 60% more than you like the other one? You know, because the risk is you show up with two ideas and then the client says, oh, well, I kind of like both. Let's combine them and make a third idea. Or let's like, you know, or like they it's like almost like opening the door to like a design exercise with potentially no end in sight.
Yeah, I believe that. I've heard keep your best idea back. If you have two, give them the slightly your not favorite one first, because they're probably going to say no to whatever's first, and then bring the other one in, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, something I heard once.
Well, you know, when I presented the project to my parents, their project, what I did was I started by showing them the designs that I didn't like, that I tried, that are like, these are all the things that I tried that I didn't like, and now I'm going to show you at the end the one that I do like. Right. So that ended up working, but
that's more honest.
It's always a very it's tough call. You got to kind of read your client and know. Well, you got to kind of you got to protect yourself too by providing enough fees to do the project effectively. But yeah, if it's just a piece of furniture, it's not going to be in the same order of magnitude as obviously doing a project out of the ground.
I think the envisioning part is really important, because I don't have the vision to say do a lot any of what you do there, and I think well worth the fees, whatever they may be, to have someone who can think through that level of detail and next step, and like comprehensive vision around something like that. Something as small as a 650 square foot apartment, like that's just not. That's before you came on the call, I said, you know what I love about architects that do renovated places that an architect has done for themselves is all the little details that nobody else is gonna think of. Because you sit there and you're thinking about it over such a long period of time. Like, how long have you lived there now? Like 2 years?
3 years?
3 years?
Lived here for 3 years now? Yeah. There's an architect. Go ahead.
Someone who's buying your place is buying 3 years of you designing it, and that is, you know, they're not going to pay for it. I'll be honest with you, but they're getting a lot of extra value.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely true. There's an architect, Nick Milkovich. He's a famous in his own right now. He used to work for Arthur Erickson. And he said that the best way to design a home is to live in it.
You know what? I have a friend at the dog park who's a older gentleman, and he's talked to me about Nick Malkovich before. So yeah,
He's great.
that's a
He's
big name.
a really nice
He worked
guy.
for Ericsson for like what, all his career?
Nearly until he passed, and then now he's got his own practice.
Mm.
And he's done a couple of nice projects on his own now. He was, I think, in Ericsson's the section of Ericsson's office where they did the custom homes primarily. And the great thing about the custom homes department of Ericsson's office, from what I've heard, is that that's kind of where they got to do all the experimental details. And then if the detail worked, then it got shipped out to a bigger project. So like some of the details at the Museum of Anthropology started in someone's home and then ended up in the museum.
I'm hearing big budgets when you say custom
That's
homes
right.
division.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, well, Ericsson, it's a whole other
West
it's a whole other
Vancouver.
world. Yeah, that's right. Those West Van super mansions. Well, they're not really McMansions. They're like they're more tasteful, but they're as expensive, if not more. Yeah, smaller and more expensive, but more carefully considered.
Better, yeah. Let's just say it, quality.
Yeah.
Well, this was really fun. Do you want anything that I didn't ask you that you want to touch on?
Oh, geez, I think I kind of hit most of it. Maybe I'll just, since you like the details, I'll just throw a couple of other. Just like looking around to make sure I touched all my favorite details in the house.
Please.
The chairs we got imported from Spain. Because the plywood looked very similar, and the nice thing too is that these chairs are actually, it's marine grade plywood, and the fabric is actually made from recycled sails of decommissioned sailboats. And the name of the sailboat it came from is on the bottom of each chair. So I really love those. Yeah, I really love these chairs, and they're so simple, just made from recycled sails and plywood. So I love those. A detail that I did in both apartments that I can't recommend enough is that if you're getting a rug, make sure you get a resilient mat to put under the rug, because it makes it so much softer on your feet. So subfloors, I love subfloors. Especially if you live in an apartment with concrete, it's going to wear on your knees. You're going to feel sore if you are standing all day. So definitely recommend. It's like a bit of a softer floor. But no, I think we really hit on a lot, I guess. And we also, I'm glad we talked a lot about like cost and like value of doing things. It seems now like all of the projects I do outside of work are projects that I personally see value in doing. Like there's something rewarding about it, whether it's writing, doing a podcast, you're familiar with that, doing a design project, or now even what we're doing is, now that we're trapped inside, is we're doing a little animated project,
cool,
which is really fun. And I mean, I guess I don't have much else to add other than that it's nice to be creative, even if it's not as fiscally rewarding as it could be at times.
Yeah, you're nothing if not creative. I can see that for sure, despite the engineer background.
Yeah, despite working against me. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if someone wants to have you work some magic in their apartments or houses or whatever kind of thing, furniture even, how do they find out more about you and reach you, James?
Oh, well, they can find all my contact information on my website, jamesavbligh.com. That's JAMES, A as in Alpha, V as in Victor, BLIGH. I would say that's the best way. Another thing, just since we're closing, is if there's enough questions, if they can maybe contact you, and we could maybe do like a mailbag or something.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Like questions, or maybe if you have like, questions for an architect, then we can collect those over a period and maybe do another episode.
That would be awesome. I'd look forward to it.
Yeah, great.
Well, thanks. I'm glad today was less hectic. I don't have anywhere to go immediately after, so we got to spend a bit more time and cool with you being on site too. So thanks, Aaron, for coming on camera. You look beautiful.
Just as thanks for being on camera, and you look beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Vancouver Real Estate Today explores the art of living through genuine storytelling and localized expertise. If you enjoy what we do here, do us a favor and write us a review, and visit us at vancouverrealestatetoday.ca and discover the home that lets you express and live who you are.